If you haven't done it to another, it's been done to you. It's confusing, disappointing, and sometimes heartbreaking. What is it? The friend zone. After a string of negative dating experiences, my next guest thought there has to be a solution. Having a research background, she started to keep a log of the good and bad things that happened while she was dating. The log turned into a blog, and the blog turned into a book, Love Factually, a data-driven how-to romance book for people looking for lifelong love. Today, she's going to use science to shed light on the questions, why is the friend zone a thing? How can single people waste less time? And can men and women really just be friends? Lifelong student, people watcher, Dear Abbey on science, Dr. Duana Welch. Welcome to the show.
Oh, Meredith, thank you for that very kind introduction. It is a joy to be here.
Well, I think we've all heard or used the words, I think we're just better as friends. But as I was talking to some of my friends about their experience in or giving the friend zone, I kind of got the feeling that there may be different versions of the friend zone. And so I would like your take on this. Are there officially different flavors of friend zone, or is it just one?
Well, as you know, I try to base everything that I say on science. And of course, science hasn't explored every single facet of this, but it appears that women's version of let's just be friends and men's version of let's be friends are kind of different versions. And again, this is aggregate data, meaning I'm talking about large groups of people. Your mileage may vary, but
That's awesome.
science is very good at telling us what most people are going to do most of the time, what most people are doing most of the time. It's good at saying, okay, if you're a person with a penis, this is probably what's happening. If you're a person with a vagina, this is probably what's happening. And I shouldn't even put it that way because, I like to be LGBTQ diverse is to the extent that I know the science about that. And so if you're transgender out there listening, just when I say women, if you're a trans woman, go ahead and think about yourself in those data because still other data indicate that psychologically you're probably very similar to the gender that you know yourself to be, not the one you were assigned at birth. So what we know for sure is that if you look at men versus women and let's just be friends. Most women, when they want to be friends with a guy, they just want to be friends. They really, when women have friendships with men, Dr. April Blesky found that a lot of the time women are being friends with men to learn about how men think about women, to get a man's perspective, a man's take, to kind of have an inside track. They're really not looking to date that guy. They're not kind of trying to slide into your DMs, in other words. They're really being friends, but with benefits, but not the sexual benefit. The benefit is, oh, now I know things that I didn't know before, or maybe you could open this jar for me. It's not, it's not necessarily sexual. When men are friends with women, Dr. Blesky's research indicates that most of the time, those men would happily have a sexual relationship with the woman or women that they're friends with. And many times, these men are actually hoping for a romance to develop. In other words, they put themselves in the friend zone in the hopes of something more. It's not necessarily that the woman put themselves there, it's that they put themselves there, which I find fascinating.
That is fascinating. I remember you talking about that research in another interview, and it was like 55%. And I was struck by that because then I, went down the mental rabbit trail of thinking, well, wait a minute, is that like a nefarious 55%? Is that an inauthentic 55%? Or is that just men doing evolutionarily what's natural to their, for lack of a better word, lizard brain, to mate with whomever offers?
You know, I can't answer this definitively. I can tell you, I was just having a conversation like this with a client about attachment style who was asking, so is this a nature thing? Is it a nurture thing? And even whether you are phenotypically, meaning physically male or female, is not purely genetics. Isn't that weird?
What do you
If
mean?
Well, everything's nature and nurture, not one or the other, basically. So, if a woman has sex on the day she ovulates, but she didn't have sex the week before that, her odds of having a boy are, if she gets pregnant, are something like 90%. That's nature and nurture. It's not just one or the other. If a
Interesting.
woman has sex 3 or 4 days before she ovulates, but not after that, she's more likely to have a girl. So again, an interaction of the environment and genetics, which led you to be who you are, what your body looks like. So when we talk about is friend zoning oneself, if you're a guy, nature or nurture, is it lizard brain? Is it evolutionary? I think to a large degree it is evolutionary, but I don't think it's necessarily nefarious or wanton. In other words, I don't think men willy-nilly become friends with women hoping that one of these women is going to have sex with them. I think instead they become friends with women who they actually really like as people in the hopes that this will become sexual. And in fact, I'm extending some of Dr. Blesky's research here. Again, I don't know for sure that I'm right. I know that it makes sense that this would be true. That what these men are doing is they're picking women they really like so much that they don't want to ruin it by possibly making a sexual move. And they are hoping that it will become more. Research indicates that there are men who are friends with women who don't make a move for this reason. They're afraid of ruining the friendship.
Interesting. Okay, so I have so many thoughts. My first thought is this is kind of why women don't trust men because of, oh, we're friends, that's our authentic, real relationship. But then if it's statistically true by research that they would jump on the opportunity to, have sex with that person or have a romantic relationship or both, then it kind of, I don't know, it makes it feel like the friendship's less authentic, that they are more of an opportunist, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I do. I think that this is another case of both and. I think that there are men who they're hoping that all their female friendships potentially turn sexual at some point, and those friendships aren't very sincere in the sense that they're not very deep friendships. I also know for a fact that there are men who are genuinely friends with women who they kind of are in love with now, and they just don't know how to move it forward. They're afraid if I move this forward and she doesn't feel the same way, not only did I not have sex, I don't have my friend anymore. So
Interesting.
I think it's both and. I think it depends on the guy whether the motivation is hit it and quit it or whether it's more sincere. I
Hmm.
will say what's really funny is in the animal world, there's a lot of purely sexual friend zoning that happens, where male creatures will even pretend to be female to get in with the females.
Oh my gosh.
Some fish do this. They cloak themselves. I'm not sure how they do this. I'm not into zoology enough to know that level of detail, but they do things that make them appear to be behaviorally or actually physically female. They get in with the females and kind of like, hey, we're buddies, right? And then they jump on them and have sex.
Oh my gosh. I really didn't expect fish to come into this conversation, but I am surprised and delighted, Duana. Thank you for that gift of knowledge. There is some real evolutionary mismatching happening when it comes to like modern dating. And I would love for you to speak on that because as I was talking to different friends about the friend zone, getting an idea of what's your experience with this, what's your opinion about it. A lot of them used that conversational opportunity to express a lot of frustration with the way that modern dating looks. Only one person was really content with the way that they were operating because of the, sexual liberation that we have nowadays. So can you speak to the, like, that mismatch that's happening that's causing some unhappiness?
Well, Can you be a little more specific about what their complaint is? I want to make sure I address
It's the apps.
really what they want to know.
It's the apps. It's the, talking with, like, here's what the guy said. The guy said, yeah, you talk with this girl for weeks, at least 2 weeks, and you're back and forth, and then you meet up and you hook up, and then and they like checked for consent like the whole time, and then they would get a message like the next day saying, hey man, that wasn't cool. And they're like, we literally just talked about this. And then they're like, well, that's all right, we're just better as friends, and or ghost them. So, but since we're talking about friend zoning, that example is more relevant. But it's a lot of misunderstanding and really not clear communication about what being a friend means and dating means. And to be fair, I asked the follow-up question. I tried to channel you when I was asking them questions, my best Duana insight. And I said, were you like hanging out with them, or was it like, hey girl, hey, I like you, I want to be with you? And more times than not, it was hanging around, like just existing in the space and not being forward and saying, hey girl, hey.
So they met on a dating app, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so by definition, if you meet on a dating app, that's not about just being friends. So my advice would be, if you meet on a dating app, understand this isn't the same thing as you were hanging out in the park, or you were, shopping somewhere, or you were at a club and you didn't know if they were single and you didn't know if they were looking. You met on a dating app. Don't friend zone yourself. My advice to you would be, just like men have evolutionarily driven thoughts that help them suss out who will be a good partner, long term or short term, women have the same thing. And one of women's mechanisms to see if you are worth taking a risk on is, will you stick your neck out for me? If you act like, well, I'm on this dating app, but I'm acting like your friend, but I'm really hoping for more, women see that sometimes as manipulative, disingenuous, and even worse, they see it as weak. Hate to be the bearer of terrible news, but this can help you, I hope. They see it as weak. You're on a dating site. Initiate a real date. Don't do the thing that shows that you're an omega male as opposed to an alpha male. Look, women are looking for the guy who can provide and protect and will provide and protect, meaning that you offer commitment and the prospect of resources going forward. That's not all they're looking for, but they're definitely looking for those two things in a long-term mateship, and often even in a short-term mateship, they're looking for those signs. So if you do the thing where you say, hey, how's your day going? And you don't further that with, can I talk to you? Can we meet? I'd like to take you out for a drink on Friday evening. How about this time in this place? I'll meet you there. And then you pick up the tab. If you hang back and you split the check, that's what friends do. Friends split the check. If you don't ask her for a specific time or place, if you say, well, maybe we'll hang out on Saturday, and that's where you leave it, and she doesn't have clear signals from you, I want you to be my partner potentially, and I'm going to do the things that men do when they're very sure that they're interested in you. Well, why would she pick you? Look, any woman that you're interested in, you're not the only guy that's interested in her. Other men are also interested. Who are they going to pick? The guy who said, I want to take you out Saturday. Here's the time. Here's the place. I'm paying. Or the guy who says, I don't know, let's hang out sometime. What about Netflix and chill? You're going to get friend zoned. That's how that's going to happen, because you weren't clear. You didn't pursue her. Men have the prerogative of pursuit. Women have the right of refusal. If you don't want them to exercise their right of refusal, you need to exercise your prerogative of pursuit. Be clear. Don't act like the omega male. Act like the alpha male. Pardon me. Act like the alpha male who knows what he wants and pursues it clearly. I don't mean be a jerk. Sometimes people misconstrue that. So I want to be very clear. I want you to be kind. I want you to be respectful. Look, getting consent is totally cool. But I think a lot of times what people really mean when they say, well, I was respectful, is I was so nebulous that she really didn't know whether I wanted to be her friend or a date. She was so unclear that she went for some other guy.
Interesting. So I'm starting to see how this could really cause some mental mismatching, some mental confusion for both sexes, because I understand what you're saying, and I'm putting myself in the position of a listener who is female, and she's like defensive a little bit, and she's saying, "Oh, I don't need anyone to pay for me. I'm not looking for provision. That's ridiculous. I want an equal partner." Da 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 da. And I'm starting to see how if that's her internal dialogue, and you've just demonstrated what maybe typically is the male internal dialogue, ooh, this would be creating a lot. You're going to be in business for a long time.
I have been in business for a long time and about 25 years now. And what I can tell you is equality and doing everything exactly the same are not the same thing. Look, Jeffrey Miller, who's a famous evolutionary theorist and scientist in the human mating sphere, he said, look, if mating were about what's logical, men would just give women a potato when they wanted to get married, not something they can't eat.
Oh my God. I love that so deeply.
Instead, they give women a rock, usually. That's what they give her, something that cannot be eaten, but which gives women cues that the man is willing and able to provide and therefore protect. Why do women all over the world say, oh, I have to have a man 6 foot tall or taller? 80% of women throughout the world say this. Why do they say this? Because our lizard brains tell us, from our ancestral mothers, tell us the man who's taller than all the other men can make sure that none of the other men rape me and can provide for me. But right now, it really doesn't matter that much whether a guy's that tall in terms of actual provision and protection. A guy who's, 5'5", who works in IT can probably provide just fine. But our lizard brains are still telling us something. And another thing they're saying is, and what's really interesting to me is I get this question mostly from women, not from men. I get the question of, Duana, I love it when men pay, but I also feel really awkward because I have a really good job and I could pay and I could share my portion of the bill. So I feel kind of awkward about it. And then also I've noticed when a guy doesn't pay, I just don't like him anymore.
Oh,
And they feel really bad about it. So in
interesting.
the end, our thinking today does not come from today. The easiest way to understand this is put yourself in a position of you live literally underneath a rock ledge and you're wearing animal skins. You are part of a group, and if you get pregnant without a provider and protector, i.e., a husband, maybe the group will fend for you, but maybe not. Calories might be kind of scarce, and they might just make you leave your baby on a hillside to die, which was what we had before abortion. Groups stayed small, not because people got pregnant seldom, but because they left their babies on hillsides to die. There's always been a way that people dealt with unwanted pregnancies. And unfortunately, that's the ancestral way that people dealt with that. By the way, don't shoot the messenger. I'm
No,
not saying you should do that.
no.
I'm not saying I think it's cool. Knowing how evolutionary thinking occurs is not the same thing as thinking it's cool. I don't think this is great at all. But women who fail to secure a willing provider and protector, they were less likely to survive and less likely to leave a genetic lineage that would carry their way of thinking forward. Today, women all over the world, lesbian women, straight women, women of every age, women of reproductive age, women who want children, women who don't want children, women who've had all the children they will ever have, women who can't have children. They all want a partner with more resources than they themselves possess.
So let's flip that to the other gender. So if men are or women are looking for provision and protection, what are the men looking for?
Men are looking for youth and beauty and because men can cast their genes forward into their 70s, women can't do that. But men can't cast their genes forward without someone to do it with, Not every woman can do that. The women who can do that have markers of youth and beauty. This is one reason why women try so hard to remain youthful and beautiful throughout their lives, because men, their evolution doesn't have an off switch. It's not like women say, "Oh, I've raised all my children. I now want somebody short who has no money."
There would be an app for that if they wanted that, though. There would be.
Yes, there absolutely would be. And this is one reason why on my own dating profile, I specified that I was looking for a man between 5'5" and 5'9". Maybe it was 5'4" and 5'9", because I wanted to give men who weren't considered tall the message that you won't be rejected by me. Because so often it does happen that they are. Look, this isn't fair. It's not fair. I wish it were otherwise. I wish that inner qualities were the only thing that drove mating behavior, but they're not. And so women try to be youthful and beautiful. I take really good care of my skin. I'm about to be 54, but I'm really glad I did, because I have a smoking hot husband-to-be who we're getting married in 10 days.
Yay!
Yay.
And he is smoking
And
hot. He is. He's very handsome.
And, you know, um, I have men say to me, because I work with people of all ages and cultures all over the world, different cultures, and men say to me in all of those cultures, it's not even the number I'm looking at. I want to look at her and feel like she looks young to me. Men in their 70s say this to me. They'll say, I would date a woman my own age. I just want her to look young to me.
Well, the,
So,
the example that you gave of how you adjusted your dating profile, I think is such a powerful example of how you can acknowledge these ancestral drivers and apply them to modern dating. Um, that's that's a really good example of acknowledging what I guess the science is showing, but existing in a modern world. And I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking for just ways to be more satisfied in those relationships, especially those that are pursuing long-term relationships, not just hookup culture.
yeah, and the modern context makes our evolutionary past really difficult to contend with. For example, if a man doesn't pay, a lot of women just don't like him anymore. Guys, I'm just saying, if you want to be smart with dating, pay. And if you don't want to pay, you've just gotten some valuable information that she's not it. If that seems like too much work, she's not it for you. Move on. It gives you valuable biofeedback. Your biology, your body will say, "Oh, that wasn't worth it." It's kind of like if a woman lives an hour and a half away from you and you drive to her and you realize, "Ah, that wasn't worth it at all. That wasn't, those were 3 hours poorly spent, the drive to and from." But on the other hand, if as you're driving home, you think that time flew, I can't wait to drive there again. Well, that's valuable information. So men, when you pay, when you provide, when you step up, you are getting valuable information. And so is she. If you don't do it, if you don't do what, politically incorrectly, I might call the man jobs. If you don't do them, look, the women who are really desirable, some guy's going to do those jobs and you will have no traction with her. No traction at all. So you're getting valuable biofeedback for yourself. You're also getting a chance with the woman that you really want. Look, if you're just trying to hit it and quit it, okay, do whatever you want. But if you really want this woman and you think she could be the one for me, differentiate yourself. Do these jobs. Do the driving, do the paying, show pleasure in being generous, because women are looking for those signals. And even the women who say they aren't, they pick the man who gives them. Women, there's a reason to let him pay. It tells him whether he's really into you. It tells him whether he wants to do the work. It tells you whether he's into you and whether he wants to do the work. And it also lets you emotionally connect to him. I know it's not politically correct. I wish that our ability to change a lot of our, this is what fascinates me about evolution. It didn't just shape whether we walked upright, it shapes what's happening in our heads, it shapes what we want. Men want a zero point 0.7 waist to hip ratio, whether or not they get it, they would prefer to have that. And I remember teaching in a lecture years and years ago, because I was a professor for about 20 years. I remember teaching that men wanted that, and that I thought even men who had been blind from birth would want it, that it's so hardwired because it's so highly associated with fertility and fecundity that even blind men would want it. And I said, I don't collect the data. I just read science, so you don't have to. But I'm thinking if somebody ever does this research, it's going to show this. And you know what? Somebody did the research and that's exactly what it found. If you give men blind from birth different silhouettes to feel, they pick the 0.7 waist to hip ratio. So, in other words, our genes don't just shape our morphology, our physiology, they shape what we think, they shape what we want. And women want provision and protection. So, if you're a guy, give it to them. You'll stand at the head of the pack. Women, let him give it.
So,
Don't feel so guilty about it. Just let him do the job and notice how you feel about it. If he does the job and you don't like it, he's not for you. Let him go.
yeah, I'm kind of reflecting on my own relationship. I friend zoned my husband, and then he made it out. I know what, and we were happily married. But we dated long distance, and so there was elements of formality with that long distance, and maybe that's was the secret sauce, and it all matched. But so this leads me to my next question, because I think we are probably an outlier. But you tell me, because you read the science. Is being in the friend zone a life sentence?
No, it's not a life sentence. And in fact, in ancient times, you usually would have known your partner really, really well. So you would have been friends, quite possibly. You at least would have been very strongly acquainted. Um, yeah. So it's not a life sentence, but I will say if you want to get out of the friend zone, it takes courage. Finding and committing to your life partner, which is really where my research is targeted. It's really where my efforts are targeted. Nobody needs my help to get some strange. They come to me to get a life partner. So if you want to get out of the friend zone, it's not a life sentence, but if you want to get out, you have to be persistent as a guy. As a guy, you have to be persistent. You have to say, this is what I want. I want more with you. I want to step it up. I'm going to stop treating you like my buddy and I'm going to start courting you. I'm going to start showing that I perceive you in a very different way than any of my other female friends who are just friends, than any of the other women in my life. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to spend more time with you than I spend with them. I'm going to remember everything you say. I'm going to try to be funny around you so you laugh at my jokes. I'm going to provide fun experiences and I'm going to pay for those experiences. By the way, I'm not saying you need to lavish material goods and experiences that you can't afford. I'm saying plan things you can afford, give things that you can afford. Some of the things women respond most strongly to a lot of the times are a handwritten note where you say the special things about her. That costs nothing but your time. I'm not saying that it's about money. I'm saying it's about provision of yourself and what you do have. And if you do that and you're really clear about it, but see, a lot of guys are afraid because they don't want to lose their friend. She really is a friend. A lot of the best relationships in the world are formed between former friends who are now lovers. But pardon me, you have to summon up the courage that possibly she doesn't feel the way that you do. If you want to get out of the friend zone, you have to get out of the friend zone.
You've talked in other interviews about women playing a little bit hard to get, and how that can lead to success, basically. Can you explain the difference between that and the friend zone, like friend zoning a guy and keeping him at arm's length?
Yeah, so I really the data are what they are. I now think about them a little bit differently. It doesn't change any of the advice. So as you know, I have a new edition out of Love Factually 10 Proven Steps for My Wish I Do. Anybody who already has it, this is the new edition. It's got a magnifying glass over a white heart on the cover. The other one had eyeglasses. Um, Science didn't stop happening just because I wrote the first edition, surprise, surprise, which is why there's another edition. And one of the changes in the second edition is there's no more emphasis on hard to get. The emphasis is on high self-esteem and high status. The behaviors that a woman would engage in if she had high self-esteem and therefore behaved in a high status way are the exact same behaviors a woman would use if she were hard to get.
Can you give an
The, di-
example?
the distinction is one of these is a game and the other one is Dead serious.
Oh.
Okay, here's an example. Turning your phone off on Friday night after 7. So the guys don't assume that, oh, yeah, you can totally call me. I'll be available because I have nothing going on in my life. The reason that a hard to get woman might do that is manipulation. The reason that a high status woman might do that is, you know what? It is nobody's business what I'm doing on Friday night. I am not going to advertise that I don't have a date because I want to have dates. And it's completely legit for me to have a plan on Friday night that is me Netflixing and chilling with me. I'm worth it. I'm worth doing nice things for if I didn't happen to already have a date on Friday night. Also, hard to get implies withholding things. If you and I went out for dinner and I explained digestion to you during dinner, other than being kind of disgusting to explain that over dinner, I would be doing something really, it wouldn't change what happened at dinner. You would still digest your food whether or not you had ever understood the digestive process before. Because digestion is not a conscious process, neither is most of human mating. I can explain to a man, and I did explain to the man I'm marrying, here's what I'm doing and here's why I'm doing it. I will never call you because I don't feel secure when I call men because I know from the science a lot of men don't emotionally connect with that. They will think that I'm low status and clingy, and they will not emotionally connect with that. I don't call men ever. I don't feel right about it. It's never felt right to me. So if you want to call me, I'm going to be thrilled to hear from you because I really like you. Notice I'm not being elusive and unclear. I have told the man I really like him. I've explained to him why I'm not calling, and I never called him. I said, how you will know that I really like you is not because I'm calling you, it's because I'm excited to hear from you.
I can now see the difference between a game being played and just having like a higher elevated perception of self for both sides. That's really interesting because I always thought of all the things you're describing as like a gamified version of dating, and I just wasn't ever into it. Like I wasn't a big this just wasn't my deal. I would have been perfectly happy if the person right for me would have just plopped down in front of me and I was informed like through a heavenly beam of light, like, oh, like this is your person. But I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But that's how much I hated the idea of dating. It was very scary for me. But I think what you're saying is refreshing because it's acknowledging our ancient selves and it's acknowledging the modern world that we live in. And you're kind of giving context of how to bridge that gap through communication and self-respect. And I think a lot of people will identify with that. I can't believe we're like already out of time. This is such a good discussion. Is there any other thoughts that you want to convey? I want to ask you before we wrap. Can men and women just be friends?
So usually women can, and usually men can't.
Mm.
What I mean by this is most women who say he's just a friend really mean it. They have no intention of angling for more. Men, more than half the time, in research anyway, say that when they are just friends with a woman, they would like it to become more. A lot of times the reason that they are not trying for it to become more is that they're worried about being shot down, or they really value this friendship. This really is a friend, and they're just super scared that they're not going to even have a friend anymore if they make the move. But, a lot of men, when they're friends with a woman, they are hoping for more. I'm not saying it's impossible for men and women to just be friends. But I'm saying if you want to play the odds are men are probably to some degree interested, capital I, not little I, in women they're friends with. And women to a large degree are not.
That is fascinating. As someone who has gained more male friends since podcasting, I can say I just really enjoy male energy. Like I just dig it. I worked in sales and all female context for almost 2 decades. And so being around men, I find interesting because I'll say something and then they'll respond and I'm like, Really? That's what you got out of that, huh? Fascinating. Like they just are so interesting to me. So this has really been such an eye-opening conversation, and I hope that it does help more people find lifelong love. And I wish you the best in your very upcoming nuptials as well.
Thank you so much. And the thing is, I really like men. I really, truly like who men are. I like that they have differences and similarities. I like their perspective. As a child, most of my friends were boys. And, I kind of miss, I do have some very, very, very close male friends. They are gay. I find it much more difficult to be friends with straight men. It makes me sad because it's not that I think they're all after my bod. It's that, my straight male friends tend to be married, and there's just a certain boundary there. You can't have it the same kind of friendship usually. There's just a lot of social constructs around that. I have I look at it with an evolutionary lens, and I've accepted that, but it does make me a little bit sad because uh, I really and truly like men for their differences and their similarities, and I'm super happy that they're around.
Me too. Me too. As before we wrap up, can you tell people where they can interact with you and about the app that you helped develop?
Oh, absolutely. So you can find me, you can just Google me, Duana Welch, DuanaWelch, like the grape juice. Or you can look at lovesciencemedia.com and you will find so much free stuff your head will spin. There's days of podcast episodes, lots of articles that I've written, guest appearances that I've had. My books are there on a tab, strangely enough, called Books. Um, you can get free chapters. You can also find out how to hire me I actually have recently started doing free consultations for 15 minutes with anyone anywhere in the world. So you can see if you'd like to work with me. And I answer all my email for free. You can email me through that site. So that's lovesciencemedia.com. And then I'm so excited about this. So a couple years back, I was contacted by the CEO of a company that was looking to be the first relationship app for couples. And be, because they allowed me to be their first scientist expert, I was allowed to shape the direction of the company. And so everything on the app is based on science. So, for example, one of the questions last night was, what is the way of being touched that makes you feel the most loved? And so what happens is you answer it, your partner answers it, and you don't see each other's answers till you've both answered. And it provides a forum for discussion. And it says how this will help my relationship. Research showed that 91% of couples who don't discuss sex and sexuality easily or regularly are unhappy with their sex lives. So I got to be the person who formed the way that that app was set up from a scientific standpoint. And the app, which my partner and I have used every day for almost 500 days in a row, is called Paired, Paired. And what I love is there's even research about Paired. And the research shows that couples who use the app just 3 minutes a day are 1/3 happier than couples who either don't use the app or only use it now and then. That's a lot of return on investment there.
I would
So,
agree.
you know what? I'm not getting any kickbacks. I just am an evangelist for the app. It's just fascinating. It's so much fun. And, my partner and I started using the app because he said, "Oh, I want to use that. You helped develop that. I want to see what it's about." And we got sucked in and we've done it for 500 days now.
That's amazing. So many good resources. Thank you so much for having this conversation. Let's hope that it leads to more lifelong love.
Thank you. I completely agree. I have the best job in the world. I get to create more love. What could be better than that?
Exactly. Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. I hope to see you next week too. I talk with the most interesting people that you've probably never heard of. Most of them are paradoxical and bring an opportunity for you to grow as a person. So if you like bright, meaningful entertainment, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications.